Hi everybody, welcome to our professional development screencast. I will discuss about challenges to library materials, and we will learn about the Library Bill of Rights, access to materials. I created this presentation for you, Maria R. Ozuna, your library media specialist, and with that we will continue. Objectives today: what will you be learning after this professional development? What will be the goals and the things that you will take with you after we're done with this presentation? Well, this presentation will demonstrate in detail a response on how to handle a challenge to a library holding. By the end of this presentation, you will increase your knowledge and understanding of how a challenge to a library holding should be addressed. You will increase your knowledge on intellectual freedom. You will be able to explain the difference between banned and challenged materials. You will increase your knowledge on the crucial role the Library Bill of Rights plays in expressing the rights of library users to intellectual freedom and the expectations the association places on libraries to support those rights. You will be able to understand and follow the reconsideration policy and procedures. You will get acquainted with the reconsideration form. I actually found 2 forms and I will share that with you later. You will increase your knowledge in identifying challenged books and the reasons for being challenged. First of all, you will ask yourself, what is a challenge to a library holding? As stated by American Library Association, a challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict materials based upon the objections of a person or group. Challenges do not simply involve a person expressing a point of view. Rather, they attempt to remove material from the curricula of library, thereby restricting the access to others. Once again, as stated by the American Library Association, I quote word per word, a challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict materials based upon the objections of a person or group. A banning is the removal of those materials. So that is the difference between these two. A challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict materials. It's just an attempt. They have to follow procedures. They have to fill out these forms, and there's a lot of steps involved in trying to remove a certain material from the library. A banning, that's the complete removal of those materials after they completed the form and everything that deals with removing something from the library. What is intellectual freedom? Again, this is quoted exactly from the Association Library. The right to read, receive and express ideas, and the right to acquire skills to seek out, explore, and examine ideas. Intellectual freedom entitles physical access, which includes being able to locate and retrieve information unimpeded by fees, age limits, separate collections, or other restrictions. Intellectual freedom allows libraries to provide books and other materials that will meet a wide range of ages and interests. Intellectual freedom allows libraries, or our libraries are public institutions and they cannot limit access on the basis of age or other characteristics. Librarians are taught as part of their professional education to evaluate books and other materials and to select materials based on library policies. Libraries believe in freedom of choice for all people, but we also believe in common sense. Therefore, it will be extremely unusual for a young child to check out adult material. Libraries and American value. American Library Association clearly states, libraries in America are foundations of the communities they serve. Free access to the books, ideas, resources, and information in America's libraries is imperative for education, employment, enjoyment, and self-government. Libraries are a legacy to each generation, offering the heritage of the past and the promise of the future. To ensure that the libraries flourish and have the freedom to promote and protect the public good in the 21st century, we believe certain principles must be guaranteed. To that end, we affirm this contract with the people we serve. All of this is quote by quote from Libraries and American Value. As librarians, these are our laws. We follow this in order to serve our patrons. We defend the constitutional rights of all individuals, including children and teenagers, to use the library's resources and services. We value our nation's diversity and strive to reflect that diversity by providing a full spectrum of resources and services to the communities we serve. We affirm the responsibility and the right of all parents and guardians to guide their own children's use of the library and its resources and services. We connect people and ideas by helping each person select from and effectively use the library's resources. We protect each individual's privacy and confidentiality in the use of library resources and services. We protect the rights of individuals to express their opinions about library resources and services. We celebrate and preserve our democratic society by making available the widest possible range of viewpoints, opinions, and ideas so that all individuals have the opportunity to become lifelong learners, informed, literate, educated, and culturally enriched. Excuse me. Change is constant, but these principles transcend change and endure in a dynamic technological, social, and political environment. By embracing these principles, libraries in the United States can contribute to a future that values and protects freedom of speech in a world that celebrates both our similarities and our differences, respects individuals and their beliefs, and holds all persons truly equal and free. So as you can see, these are the principles that as librarians we live by, and we will fulfill each one and everyone to the fullest by respecting everybody and respecting our American value. This is adopted February 3rd, 1999 by the Council of the American Library Association, and it was retrieved from this website. With that, we come to the Library Bill of Rights. Okay, well, what are the Library Bill of Rights? Just as Americans, we follow the Bill of Rights, and while we go by to be in the United States, the same reason, and the libraries, we have rights that we follow as well, and these deal with the First Amendment as well. It says the American Library Association affirms that all libraries are forums for information and ideas, and that the following basic policies should guide their services. So these are the policies that we follow as librarians. Books and other library resources should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people of the community the library serves. Materials should not be excluded because of the origin, background, or views of those contributing to their creation. Number 2, libraries should provide materials and information presenting all points of view on current and historical issues. Materials should not be prescribed or removed because of partisan or doctrinal disapproval. Number 3, libraries should challenge censorship in the fulfillment of their responsibility to provide information and enlightenment. Number 4, libraries should cooperate with all persons and groups concerned with resisting abridgment of free expression and free access to ideas. Number 5, a person's right to use a library should not be denied or abridged because of origin, age, background, or views. Number 6, libraries which make exhibit spaces and meeting rooms available to the public they serve should make such facilities available on an equitable basis regardless of the beliefs or affiliations of individuals or groups requesting their use. And these Bill of Rights were adopted on June 18, 1948, amended February 2nd, 1961, June 27, 1967, and finally January 23, 1980 by the American Library Association Council. This is where I retrieved the Library Bill of Rights, and this will be the interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights. Let me see if it takes me there. There it is. My internet is a little bit slow. I guess I clicked twice, but We'll see which one pops up first. Okay, this is an interpretation for challenge resources, which is what we're talking about. It says libraries and American value states. Again, this is coming straight from the American values that I just discussed with you like 2 slides before. It says, we protect the rights of individuals to express their opinions about library resources and services. The American Library Association declares as a matter of firm principle that it is the responsibility of every library to have a clearly defined written policy for collection development that includes a procedure for review or challenge resources. What that is telling us that as librarians, we must have a written policy in our collection development, okay, that includes procedures, rules, how to review, how we'll go about any situation that comes upon or somebody challenges something from the library, a book, a resource, something that's electronically. Well, there are forms to be followed and procedures. We cannot just say, oh, I don't want this book, or remove it. We have to follow certain procedures and rules. It says collection development applies to print, which are books, anything that's in print, and media resources or formats in the physical collection. It also applies to digital resources such as databases, ebooks, and other downloadable and streaming media. This was adopted in 1971, amended 1990, and then it was amended again 2014. And this is what it was called before. It says, see Policy Reference File, Challenge Resources and Interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights, 2013-2014, also through a law, for formerly titled Challenge Materials and Interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights. Okay, and if we were to continue here, we see how the entire Library Bill of Rights, it's excuse me, it's explained. We see all the Library Bill of Rights right here. See, I went into this one, which was because this deals with intellectual freedom, which was our second or third slide in the presentation, and how the Library Bill of Rights are connected to the intellectual freedom. And I just read you the challenge resources, and then we'll go here, expurgation of library materials. That means, and it gives it to me, it explains to us what it is. It says the act of expurgation denies access to the complete work and the entire spectrum of ideas that the work is intended to express. This is censorship. Expurgation based on the premise that certain portions of a work may be harmful to minors is equally a violation of the Library Bill of Rights. So, and then if we go to the top, it takes us to the next one, but it's this one, the one that follows. It says access to resources and services in the school library media program. Members of the school community involved in the collection development process employ educational criteria to select resources unfettered by their personal, political, social, religious views. Students and educators served by the school library have access to resources and services free of constraints resulting from personal, partisan, or doctrinal disapproval. School librarians resist efforts by individuals or groups to define what is appropriate for all students or teachers to read, view, hear, or access regardless of technology, formats, or method of delivery. And the next one is this one, access to library resources and services for minors. All of these are linked to our Library Bill of Rights. It says librarians and library governing bodies have a public and professional obligation to ensure that all members of the community they serve have free, equal, and equitable access to the entire range of library resources regardless of content, approach, or format. This principle of library service applies equally to all users, minors as well as adults. Lack of access to information can be harmful to minors. Librarians and library governing bodies must uphold this principle in order to provide adequate and effective service to minors. And the next one is evaluating library collections. Evaluation of library materials is not to be used as a convenient means to remove materials that might be viewed as controversial or objectionable. The next one, restricted access to library materials. Participation in a democratic society requires unfettered access to current social, political, economic, cultural, scientific, and religious information. Information and ideas available outside the prison are essential to prisoners for a successful transition to freedom. Learning to be free requires access to a wide range of knowledge, and suppression of ideas does not prepare the incarcerated of any age or life for life in a free society. Even those individuals that a lawful society chooses to imprison permanently deserve access to information, to literature, and to a window on the world. Censorship is a process of exclusion by which authority rejects specific points of view. That material contains unpopular views or even repugnant content does not provide justification for censorship. Unlike censorship, selection is a process of inclusion that involves the search for resources regardless of format that represent diversity and a broad spectrum of ideas. The Correctional Library collection should reflect the needs of its community, adopted 2010 and amended 2014. And it continues, but these are the top 6 intellectual freedom that are linked to our topic of challenge resources. Okay, where is I'm sorry, let me take you back to my presentation. No, that's not it. Hold on. Where did you go? There it is. All right. So that is the Library Bill of Rights. As you can see, here it's short and sweet and to the point. And once I go into the interpretations, it explains it a little bit more in detail, just the way I just read them to you. All right. This is the exact piece that I got from the Bill of Rights and the interpretation, and that is what I just read to you. I will read it again. Challenge resources and interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights. Libraries, again, from an American value, states, we protect the rights of individuals to express their opinions about library resources and services. The American Library Association declares as a matter of firm principle that it is the responsibility of every library to have a clearly defined written policy for collection development that includes a procedure for review of challenge resources. Collection development applies to print and media resources or formats in the physical collection. It also applies to digital resources such as databases, ebooks, and other downloadable and streaming media. Content filtering is not equivalent to collection development. Content filtering is exclusive, not inclusive, and cannot effectively curate content or mediate access to resources available on the internet. This should be addressed separately in the library's acceptable use policy. These policies reflect the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights and are approved by the appropriate governing authority. Challenge resources should remain in the collection and accessible during the review process. This is one thing that I learned as I was doing this presentation, that you cannot, or as a librarian, we cannot remove any of the resources while the process is going. So that's very important for everybody to know, that even though you're challenging a certain book, let's pretend it's a book, you cannot expect the librarian to remove it right away. It needs to stay until the process finishes and decides whether it stays or not. But it will remain in the collection and accessible to everybody during the review process. The Library Bill of Rights states in Article 1 that material should not be excluded because of the origin, background, or views of those contributing to their creation. And in Article 2, that material should not be proscribed or removed because of partisan or doctrinal disapproval. Freedom of expression is protected by the Constitution of the United States, but constitutionally protected expression is often separated from unprotected expression only by a dim and uncertain line. The Supreme Court has held that the Constitution requires a procedure designed to examine critically all challenge expression before it can be suppressed. This procedure should be open, transparent, and conform to all applicable open, meeting, and public record laws. Resources that meet the criteria for selection and inclusion within the collection should not be removed. Therefore, any attempt, be it legal or extra-legal, to regulate or suppress resources in libraries must be closely scrutinized to the end that protected expression is not abridged. So basically, what we're talking about, challenge resources, this is the main thing. The interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights with challenge resources comes straight from the libraries and American value, and this is where basically I feel like this right here is my entire presentation. So we understand that, we're good. All right, now after learning a little bit of the Bill of Rights and what a challenge is and what a ban item is, how do we respond to a challenge to a library holding? Okay, all this information, once again, verbatim from as stated by a law, which is American Library Association. It states, library workers and educators who receive such expressions of concern should courteously refer them to the person responsible for responding to concerns, and the adequate person should take the following steps. So in other words, if you're a teacher, if you're a paraprofessional, a secretary, and someone comes to you with a concern like this, it's best that you pass it on to somebody that's in charge, like anybody in the library, or the librarian, or the principal, so that he's aware that this is going on. But more than likely, the librarian will be able to help you more with the situation to somebody trying to challenge a library item. Okay, first of all, you have to be polite. Listen thoughtfully and acknowledge the person for bringing up his or her concerns to you, and assure the patron is the person that's bringing in the item, and it's upset because, you know, he or she believes that it doesn't belong in the library. Okay, and assure that his or her complaint will be taken seriously. Find out the specific reason for his or her concern, whether he or she has read the entire work or only parts, and the specific action the patron would like library staff to take. After that, do not make promises of taking action or appear to agree with the individual. Instead, offer assistance in finding something else that would better meet the person's needs. Then, if the person requests the item be removed from the library's collection, explain that although the individual may be offended by the library resource, others might not have the same perspective. Describe how library materials are selected. Libraries have diverse collections with materials from many points of view, and a library's mission is to provide access to information for all users. All library users have the First Amendment right to borrow, read, view, and listen to library resources. If the individual is concerned about a children's or young adults resource, explain that parents and guardians play the major role in guiding their children's or wards reading and library use. Often a person's concern about a children's or young adult book involves a desire to protect all children. By removing that item from the collection or restricting access to it, explain that each family has a right to determine which library materials are acceptable for its children and must accord the same right to other parents. Avoid giving personal opinions. Many expressions of concern and after the individual has had an opportunity to express personal feelings about a library resource. The person only wanted to be heard and have his opinions acknowledged. No further action is needed. If this is the case, thank the person for his interest, make notes about the conversation, and file them for future reference. Additionally, report the conversation to the library director or principal. And don't forget to put a date when you write down the notes, and the time, and the name of the person that approached you. If the concerned individual is not satisfied during the discussion and wants the item removed, explain the formal reconsideration process and its timeline. Often persons who have a concern would like immediate action and are not aware of the length of time this procedure takes. State what your policy says about the availability of the material during the reconsideration process. And this is what I had just talked about, that we cannot remove it just because it's being challenged. It has to stay in the library shelf. So remind the person that it will stay there throughout the reconsideration process. Best practice is that the material under reconsideration will not be removed from use or have access restricted pending completion of the process. Provide the concerned party with the relevant policies. Make sure you provide them with the library's collection development policy, the library bill of rights, the freedom to read, the free access to libraries for minors, the freedom to view, and the reconsideration policy. Stress that no action is taken unless the form is fully completed, signed, identifying the individual or group, and submitted. Explain that the submission of a completed form will trigger the formal reconsideration process and that the document will become part of the public record. After that, after the conversation, make notes about the conversation, date them, and retain the information to provide background in the event that a request for a formal reconsideration form is filed. Remember that all such notes become part of the record of the reconsideration process and may become public records. Keep the principal informed of any concerns expressed, whether you feel they have been successfully resolved or not. Knowing that a concern was expressed helps that individual respond knowledgeably if the concerned person contacts him or her. So these are some things to do to respond to a challenge. Okay, so these are additional steps that I found that we could follow when materials are still being challenged. It says, as stated by the UW-Madison, these recommendations come from the American Library Association, the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, and the CCBC. Okay. They say to review the library selection policy, including the selection criteria and reconsideration process. Similar steps to the ones I just read on the previous slide. Assess what steps have been taken in the reconsideration process and what steps are to be taken. Review the complaint. Discuss the situation with your administrator. Gather resources such as copies of reviews, information on awards, and best of the year list distinctions for the title. Read or reread the title in question, so make sure that you read the book. That way you're able to also find out more information on it. It says, maintain the material in the collection for the time being. Be prepared to explain the function of the resource. Contact the reconsideration committee. Communicate with the Board of Education or Library Board of Trustees. Find additional challenge support if necessary. When I was doing my research, I came up with these websites, and they do help with like here it says, conducting a challenge hearing. So if you go here, I'm not going to read it in detail, but just if you want to copy these websites, or once I gave everybody a copy of this presentation, you can highlight them, have them there for future reference. But let's see where, hopefully my internet here is a little bit faster than it was a while ago, and I don't lose my presentation again. But just so that you know, they are valid sites, and it helps us, you know, by guiding us a little bit more on how to conduct a challenge process. So let's see, it's coming up. Come on. My internet is a little bit slow today. And I believe this one talks about if we have to conduct a challenge hearing, and here it explains exactly what to do before a hearing. You know, brief members of the governing body on the library collection development policy, how the library has responded to challenge and the decision made, policies and procedures, you know, and it explains everything in detail. Okay, let's go back to the next one. PowerPoint. Okay, that was one. It says how to initiate requests for reconsideration. That's another one. Hopefully it takes me faster than that other one took me. There it is. And then this is another Manitowoc Public Library. And you'll see that even the public libraries work similarly to how public schools work as well. And it also gives you steps as to what to do. Initiation of request for reconsideration, acknowledgement of receipt or request for reconsideration, inquiries about specific requests for reconsideration, board notification. That's a good one, that notified the board as well. I forgot to mention that on the last one. Staff evaluation of challenge material, reconsideration by the board, ad hoc, review panel, public hearing, board's decision on challenge material, and the forms appended. And it explains in detail and as what to do. Okay, so let's go back to the next one. And this one is dealing challenges with graphic novels. It also helps you, and it's not necessarily just graphic novels, and this is also by American Library Association. It explains to you how to be prepared, key messages about libraries, what is it that the librarians supposed to do when responding to a challenge. I like these. These are a little bit shorter than the way I was explaining to you. See, they recommend that listening to and dealing effectively with complaints, greet each person with a smile, communicate your openness to receive inquiries, and that you take them seriously. It's, similar to what I was just letting you know on the previous slides. It says listen more than you talk. Indeed, practice active listening. Take time to really listen and acknowledge the individual's concern. Stay calm and courteous. Relate the 4 key points above. Talk about freedom of choice, the library's role in serving all people, and the responsibility of parents to supervise their own children's library use. Avoid library jargon. Sharing personal opinions is not a good idea. Instead, be prepared to distribute facts, policy, and other background materials in writing. Be prepared to give a clear and non-intimidating explanation of the library's procedure for registering a complaint, and be clear about when a decision can be expected. Be nice about it. Be calm. Don't get upset. See, now over here it gives you ideas of talking with the media, what you need to do. Sample questions and answers. If they ask you, why do libraries have to buy graphic novels? This is something how you could answer that question. Shouldn't be able to control what my kids are exposed to. Gives you an idea of what to say. Can a child check out graphic novels, even those intended for adults? And it gives you an idea of how to answer, what to say. Well, I can be at the library every time my child is there. Does this mean my child is on her own? Obviously, no, they're not on their own. The best library resource are the libraries. But it just gives you ideas as to what to answer if they ask you particular questions and you're not aware of how to answer. Those are good sites where you can get more help. And then, of course, you have the Office for Intellectual Freedom. They're always there to help and willing to help. And I put the site there, and here it is. Gives you the address, the phone number in case you need to call them. So, there's a lot of support on how to handle. And again, it's also through American Library Association. And then the last one, oops, sorry, let me go back, there it is. How to respond to a challenge and concerns about library resources, also through a law. And I believe this is where I got mine, the ones I put on the slide. There it is. And it's through the American Library Association. And these are the steps that I put on my slide that I was talking to you about and explaining, for complaints and expressions of concern. So as you can see, there is a lot of help, a lot of guidance. American Library Association has plenty of information. Okay, now before I had already done this entire presentation, and I was in shock to find out that I Googled like 5 districts around my district, like McAllen ISD, Edinburgh ISD, Mission ISD. I can recall the other 2. Anyways, they didn't have the procedures online or the form. And even for my own district, I had to make some phone calls to the library director of the district, and she said that they're not online yet. I think they're being evaluated again before they post them. And then our district, as you know, is going through some changes in the website. So, but they do have a booklet where they have them all. And before I received an answer from her when I called her, I had already come up with this, so I left it here, but just so you can have an idea that they're all similar. And this is from Oregon City Public Library, and this is our collection development policy. And the image, I retrieved it from there as well, so it's original from there. And this is their policy on when somebody wants to challenge an item. And it talks about the library, their vision. It says, inviting, innovative, involved Oregon City Public Library is a community anchor, inspires literacy and lifelong learning, strengthens community supports and understanding of Oregon City's past and present in order to build its future. They have their library mission to provide the information, inspiration, and ideas that empower, enrich, and educate each resident of their service area. And this is what we're talking about. Intellectual freedom. So the right to read and access materials of varying viewpoints is an important part of the intellectual freedom basic to democracy. The principles of intellectual freedom are guaranteed in the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. In keeping with those principles, the library favors no viewpoint and endorses the following American Library Association documents listed here and also found in Appendix C. Again, see, they talk about the library as an American value, which is, well, what we discussed. Freedom to read, that's one of the documents that I recommended to also give the whoever is complaining, that way they're aware of this law. Freedom to view as well, the Library of Rights, which we went over as well, and free access to libraries for minors. And this is where you would read about it. It says collection, they have their collection development goals. It says create and maintain an easily accessible collection which educates, entertains, challenges, empowers, and responds to the needs and interests of a dynamic community. Collection Development Authority. Primary responsibility for selection of material lies within the library director with appeal to the library board. Day-to-day selection of material will be delegated to the youth and adult services librarians or other staff as assigned. And they have their principles of collection development. The library's collection will include material and most subjects, incorporate various viewpoints, and offer a wide selection of genres, themes, and items of special interest to the community. Each type of material must be considered in terms of its own merit and considered as a whole, not by selected passages or portions. To develop and maintain a diverse collection, items that represent minority viewpoints, opinions, and perspectives will be included. Library materials shall not be excluded because of the political, social, religious views of the author or artist, or due to the characteristics that make them part of a protected class under federal or Oregon state law. And they provide a website where there's more information about that. Selectors consider prospective additions to the collection based on the selection criteria, regardless of their personal taste. These standards apply equally to purchase and donated materials. And then they have what they expect from reviews. Reviews in professionally recognized publication are primary source for material selection. Examples of such sources include Book List, the Horn Book Magazine, Library Journal, Publishers Weekly, School Library Journal, Video Librarian, Metacritic, and AllMusic. Other sources including recommended title lists, newspaper reviews, or expert recommendations may be used. And then they explain their criteria. Patron suggestions, what it is, the protocols, digital resources, online research tools, lucky day items, non-English language materials, archival materials, access, gifts, and here access goes back to what we're discussing. If a material needs to be challenged, it can, so everybody has access to everything. It says, except for the collections noted elsewhere in this policy, all materials will be freely and easily accessible to the public. Users are free to select or reject for themselves or their own children any item in the collection. Children are not limited to use of the materials in the children's or young adult areas. Responsibility for a child's selection or reading rests solely with their parent or guardian. The library will not limit access to materials based on content, and selection will not be inhibited by the possibility that children may inadvertently use such items. And that goes to what we're talking about, items being challenged and all that. Okay, and then here it starts. It says, request for reconsideration of library material. A singular obligation of a public library is to reflect within its collection different points of views and a diversity of opinion and experience. Some materials may be offensive to individuals or groups because of individuals' perceptions of profanity, human sexuality, social, economic, and political ideas, religious viewpoints, the background of the author, or the kind of information provided. However, these items may be meaningful and significant to other users. Oregon City Public Library does not endorse particular beliefs or views, nor does the selection of an item express or imply endorsement of the viewpoint of the author or content of the item. The library's role is to provide materials which will allow individuals to freely examine issues and make their own decisions. Library materials will not be marked or identified to show approval or disapproval of the contents, nor will items be sequestered or removed from the access to patrons. And then it explains how the residents of the Oregon City Public Library service area who express concerns about the presence of an item in the collection are given serious consideration. Such a concern expressed to a library staff member will be referred to the library director. Items may be removed from the collection under the following conditions. The library director approves removal after review of an item and determines that it does not meet the selection criteria outlined in this policy. The library board casts a majority vote to remove an item they agree does not meet the selection criteria outlined in this policy. Upon request, the individual will be supplied with a copy of the collection development policy, including the request for reconsideration of library materials form. If desired, a resident of the Oregon City Public Library service area may complete this form and return it to the library. The library director will examine the item in question and determine whether it conforms to the standards of this policy. The library director will communicate this determination to the individual. If the individual is not satisfied with the library director's decision, they may make an appeal to the library board by either submitting a letter to be considered at the next scheduled board meeting or by requesting at least 3 work days in advance to be on the agenda of the next scheduled board meeting. The library board will consider the individual's appeal and the staff recommendation and may either make a final decision at the meeting or postpone a final decision pending further review. Materials subject to reconsideration will remain available in the collection during this process. Revision is the library board will review this policy every 2 years. And then again, they state their American Library Association documents, libraries and American values. You can see all libraries abide by these beliefs, and I see them as our laws. What is it that we do? And I already read them to you, but again, they mention the Library Bill of Rights right here, which we just went through them as well, and it's the top 6. The Freedom to Read Statement, and it explains it in detail. The Freedom to View Statement. These are things that a patron that has a complaint should be aware of and should read, so that maybe like this they understand why that book cannot be removed right away without following a certain procedure. And it says free access to libraries for minors as well as an interpretation of the Library Bill of Rights. It explains it in detail as well. And then excuse me. Okay, and here it's in PDF. Everything that I just read to you, but in PDF. Okay, then that's a sample of procedures, directions, what to do through this public library. And I also have a example. So there it is. Okay, this is a request for reconsideration of library material form, and this is where I retrieved it from, and you have a copy of it. But here I went ahead and included the copy as well, and it's also online. And here it just says the title, the author. In this matter, you're representing yourself, a group. I'm sorry, let me go back. It says here, if representing a group, please provide its name and address. How did this material come to your attention? Have you read the entire work? Yes or no? Specifically, what is your objection to this material? Please provide page numbers or location if it's the entire book. Do you feel this material is objectionable to all or just some segments of the public? And what is the adverse effect of reading this material? Have you read or heard any review of this material in the media? If so, where? Is there any other material you could recommend that conveys the same viewpoint, purpose, or value? What is your specific recommendation for action to be taken by the library in this matter? Your name, your phone, your address, email, and you would just hit submit. This is an example of a request for reconsideration of library material form, and this is from the Oregon City Public Library. And like I tell you, I had already put it in the presentation before I found ours. This is our district, and it's similar to what I read to you right now. See, it says Oregon City ISD, and this is the objective. It's 5 pages as well, and it provides the criteria, the controversial issues, and if we go to the next one, here it is, challenge materials. It says, a parent of a district student, any employee, or any district resident may formally challenge an instructional resource used in the district's educational program on the basis of appropriateness. This is for an informal reconsideration. The school receiving a complaint about the appropriateness of an instructional resource shall try to resolve the matter informally using the following procedure. It says the principal or other knowledgeable professional staff shall explain the school selection process, the criteria for selection, and the qualifications of the professional staff who selected the question material. The principal or other knowledgeable professional staff shall explain the role the question material plays in the education program, its intended educational usefulness, and any additional information regarding its use. If appropriate, the principal may offer a concerned parent another resource to be used by that parent's child in place of the challenge material. If the complainant wishes to make a formal challenge, the principal shall provide the complainant a copy of this policy and a request for reconsideration of instructional materials from, and it says CEFA exhibit, which is all this. And then, I'm sorry, here it goes. It says, all formal objections to instructional resources shall be made on the request for reconsideration of instructional materials form. The form shall be completed and signed by the complainant and submitted to the principal or designee. Upon receipt of the request, the principal shall appoint a reconsideration committee. The reconsideration committee shall include at least one member of the instructional staff who either has experience teaching the challenge material or is familiar with the challenge material. Other members of the committee may include district-level staff, library staff, secondary-level students, parents, and others deemed appropriate by the principal. All members of the committee shall review the challenge material in its entirety. As soon as reasonably possible, the committee shall meet and determine whether the challenge material conforms to the principles of selection set out in this policy. The committee shall then prepare a written report. Copies of the report shall be provided to the principal, the superintendent or designee, and the complainant. The complainant may appeal the decision of the reconsideration committee in accordance with appropriate complaint policies starting at level 2. The appeal should contain a copy of the original complaint, the reconsideration committee's report, and dates of conferences with the principal or designee. It says guiding principles. The following principles shall guide the board and staff in responding to challenges of instructional resources. Number 1. A parent of a district student, any employee, or any district resident may raise an objection to an instructional resource used in a school's educational program, despite the fact that the professional staff selecting the resources were qualified to make the selection. Follow the proper procedure and adhere to the objectives and criteria for instructional resources set out in this policy. Number 2. A parent's ability to exercise control over reading, listening, or viewing matter extends only to his or her own children. Number 3. When instructional resources are challenged, the principles of the freedom to read, listen, view must be defended as well. Number 4, access to challenge materials shall not be restricted during the reconsideration process. The major criterion for the final decision on challenge materials is the appropriateness of the material for its intended educational use. No challenge library material shall be removed solely because of the ideas expressed therein. This was issued in July 1st, 2002. And I believe that's why our library director was saying they're looking at it once again to make sure everything is the way it's supposed to be. And this is the form of the instructional resources, instructional material selection, and adoption. This is the form that if a patron were to be upset and wanted to do a formal complaint, this is the form that they would be filling out. And it explains it in detail. It says, see the following pages for forms relating to reconsideration of instructional resources. Exhibit A, which is this part, request for reconsideration of instructional materials, and then checklist for reconsideration of instructional materials. So Exhibit A, request for reconsideration of instructional materials. You have to claim your name, the date, your address, your city, your state, your zip code, your phone number. And do you represent yourself, an organization? If an organization, please identify. As you can see, they're similar to the questions found on the public library form that I showed you before. It says resource on which you're commenting. Is it a book, a textbook, video, DVD, display, magazine, library program, electronic information network? To specify audio recording, newspaper, other. The title, the author, or the producer. And these are the questions that you need to answer as well. Have you reviewed the material in their entirety? If not, please do so before completing and submitting this form. To what in the material do you object? Please be specific, cite pages, etc. What do you believe might be the result of using this material? For what age group would you recommend this material? In its place, what material of equal quality would you recommend that could be used to teach similar subject matter? What do you believe should be done with the material in question? Remove it from the curriculum. And then the next page continues. Use it as resource material or a choice selection. And then the complainant signature and the date. Then Exhibit B is the checklist for reconsideration of instructional materials. Type of resource, the title, author or producer. The purpose. What is the overall purpose of the material or resource? Is the purpose accomplished? Yes or no? Authenticity. Is the author or presenter competent and qualified in the field? Yes or no? What is the reputation and significance of the author or publisher producer in the field? And then that will be B. I believe I didn't catch C at the top, but we'll continue with D. Are information sources well documented either in the resource or in the guides? Yes or no? Are translations and interpretations faithful to the original? Yes or no? Appropriateness. Does the resources promote the educational goals and objectives of the curriculum of district schools? Yes or no? Is it appropriate for the level of instruction intended? Yes or no? Are the illustrations appropriate for the subjects and age levels? Yes or no? And number 4, content. Is the content of this material or resource well presented by providing adequate scope, range, depth, and continuity? Yes or no? B, does it present information otherwise available? Yes or no? Does it give a dimension or direction that is new or different from others available for the subject? Yes or no? The review, the evaluations, source of review, evaluation, favorably review, unfavorably review. And then the last page, if answer is yes, please list titles of selection aids. Additional comments, you would put additional comments there. Recommendations by review committee for treatment of question resource. Signature of review committee, chairperson date. And this is a dated issue, updated in 68. And those are examples of the district. Sorry about that. Of our district. All right, and since we're talking about challenge material and how to go about it if somebody were to approach us, and what procedures to follow, what directions, what instructions, what to do, what forms to use, and we already went through all that. I figured I would add an infographic which I retrieved from this website right here, and it talks about the top 10 challenge books for 2017, and I actually meant yeah, because we're 2018, we're not done yet, I'm sorry. So here they are. 13 Reasons Why. That's very popular. I've heard it among students that they talk about it, they watch it. I believe it's on Netflix. That's the #1 book. Number 2, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. Top 3, Make Drama. And 4, The Kite Runner. 5, George. 6, Sex is a Funny Word. 7, To Kill a Mockingbird. 8, The Hate You Give. 9, And Tango Makes 3. 10, I Am Jazz. And those are the top 10 books of 2017. I believe I had added, let me see if it takes me back. There it is. Let me go back. I had added a video. Hopefully it doesn't take that long. And it goes back to the top 10 most challenged books.
Imagine walking down
Just
the aisle
additional
of the library
information.
looking for a book about gender identity, only to find a gap
You will
in
know
the shelf
why
it's supposed to be.
these books are being
Imagine
challenged. Oh, come on.
Challenging
internet.
discussion about a book in your English class, then being told to stop because your school's administration decided that you shouldn't be exposed to an offensive slur. Or imagine stopping at the school library during study hall to find the librarian packing up books you've been directed to ban because they contain curse words. This is censorship, and it happens more often than you think. Thousands of books have been threatened with removal in libraries and schools across the country, all in an effort to silence some of the most important, challenging, and provocative voices in literature. But don't get discouraged.
Come on, it's buffering.
We can fight back against censorship. Across the country, students, librarians, and engaged citizens have been organizing to protect our right to read. That can mean circulating petitions on social media, piling into board meetings and demanding change, hosting discussions, or even just speaking out and reporting censorship when you see it happening. Banning books silences stories and discussions. Often the most frequently challenged books are the stories that need to be heard the most. Of the 416 books that were challenged or banned in 2017, here are the top 10 most challenged. Number 10, I Am Jazz, written by Jessica Hertel and Jazz Jennings, and illustrated by Sheila Nichols, because it addresses the topic of gender identity. Number 9, And Tango Makes 3, written by Peter Purnell and Justin Richardson, and illustrated by Henry Cole, because it features a same-sex relationship. Number 8, The Hate You Give, by Angie Thomas, because it includes drug use, profanity, and offensive language. Number 7, To Kill a Mockingbird, by Harper Lee, because of violence and its inclusion of racial slurs. Number 6, Sex is a Funny Word, written by Corey Silverberg and illustrated by Fiona Smith, because its opponents believe that children should not be exposed to sex education. Number 5, George, by Alex Gino, because it includes a transgender child. Number 4, The Kite Runner, by Khaled Hosseini, because it includes depictions of sexual violence and deals with religious themes. Number 3, Drama, written and illustrated by Raymond Telgemeier, because it includes LGBT characters. Number 2, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, by Sherman Alexie, because of profanity and situations that are deemed sexually explicit. And the number 1 banned book of 2017 was 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher, because it discusses suicide. Now more than ever, readers need to come together and not be afraid of ideas that challenge us. We need to advocate for libraries that open doors to a vivid array of diverse viewpoints, even ones that might make us uncomfortable. Your words can combat the silencing of stories and attacks on your freedom to read. Raise your megaphone and speak out for banned books. To learn more, visit ala.org/books.
And there you have the top 10 challenge books. Again, I put them here on the infographic. And I want to say thank you for listening so attentively, and I hope that you learned a lot from this presentation. And these are the references where I got all the information from. Always refer where you got info from. Thank you.